We're so glad you are here this morning for a wonderful presentation. Just a few more reminders before we kick things off. Please note this meeting is being recorded. You'll have access to this and the materials after the conference is over. And please make sure to join us at 11:55 after this session for our closing remarks for the conference by Marlene Garcia. Okay, I'll go ahead and pass it on here for our presentation, Innovative Practices to Financial Aid Application Completion. I'll pass it on to a wonderful team I used to work with closely in our COE, and that's Jim McCormick and Ms. Lennar.
All right, thank you. Yeah, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our session. My name is Michael McCormick. I get to serve as the superintendent of the Val Verde Unified School District, and I'll turn it over to the co-presenter here if you want to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Mark Lenore. I'm the assistant superintendent here in Val Verde, and I oversee the Education Services Department and our school sites.
Yeah, right on. So thanks for investing some time with Mr. Lenore and I this morning. We're happy to share with you some of the things that we've been able to do around FAFSA and CADAA completion, and hope to shorten your runway. You know, we've got AB 469, which goes into effect starting next year. And so if you're part of a school system and you've been kind of doing FAFSA completion and thinking about CADAA completion, but maybe not scaling that work across your entire district in a real deep way, we're here to share our best ideas. We've had FAFSA CADAA completion as a graduation requirement in the Val Verde Unified School District since 2017. So we've got a little experience in doing the work. And the other thing we'll cover for you today is, you know, how to make this a system-wide initiative so the counselors don't feel like this entire thing is resting squarely on their shoulders. So, Mr. Lenore, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, we are located here in Riverside County, and we've been part of the Race to Submit since the year of 2014. And we were involved in helping create the Riverside County Education Collaborative, otherwise known as the RCEC, and just our overall Race to Submit. And we started this initiative basically just on doing a countywide effort on the Cal Grant GPA uploads. Up until that point, Cal Grant GPAs in a lot of places, most of Riverside County was still being done manually. At that point in time in 2014, there was still a lot of opinion that sharing FAFSA completion data was a violation of FERPA. And I think in 2015, Arnie Duncan basically said, hey, this is not a violation of FERPA. No, it was actually 2014. It's not a violation of FERPA. And we actually got the whole county to be able to take part in the GPA upload electronically. And as a result of that, we had a countywide web grants account that we were able to basically share information amongst all of our districts on who completed the FAFSA, who did not complete, and just make a more laser-like concerted effort on this. And since then, we've been doing a lot of things. We started this initiative with virtually no money. It didn't cost us anything. We were just helping process the GPA uploads and sharing data information so schools could target this. At that point in time, there wasn't much of an initiative on just FAFSA completion across our state. Matter of fact, I would call the highest FAFSA completion districts in the state, and they didn't even realize that they were highest in the state. So that just goes to show you there was no focus statewide on FAFSA completion prior to 2014. Next slide.
Right on here. Let me get some folks admitted. There we go.
Okay, so Mike just got done talking about AB 469, and that just recently was passed. It was an initiative by Eloise Gomez Reyes in the 47th district, And that basically, the intent of this bill is to improve students' access to financial aid resources that require completion of these forms such as the Community College Promise Program. And so by just making more of an effort of connecting kids to critical financial aid information, this has gotten a lot of support from our governor's office, and it's just this whole thing has really taken off. And this initiative, all of it started here in Riverside County. And so if you go onto the CSAC website, you'll see the CSAC dashboard. This is something that we helped create. And now anybody in the state of California can look up their high school and see how they're doing with FAFSA completion. Prior to this initiative, none of this was available to any of the schools in California. We had to rely on the federal government website, which was about 2 to 3 weeks behind when someone actually submitted. So now we've got our own system. Prior to that, California had nothing. And so we feel that there's been a lot of growth in this area, a lot of initiatives throughout the state now by individual districts, and most of it being done with little to no money now.
And so we'll talk just a little bit about Val Verde, just for context. This is our infograph. And, you know, our board goal back since 2017 is to have 97% FAFSA completion. And we get close to that, but it's out there as a vision, and it's something that we aspire for. But our demographics in the district, we're about 78% Hispanic, about 12% African American, and 84% of our students participate in the National School Lunch Program, so they qualify for free lunch. And roughly a fifth of our students are learning English as a second language. And so you just kind of see that, maybe our district is similar in population to your district and the students that you serve. Look, we know for our district, many of our students will be first generation college going in their families. And so that's something that's really exciting for us. And, California has made the investment to have free money for college for students. And so if you have a pretty high unduplicated count in your district, and you have, large numbers of students that qualify for the National School Lunch Program, this money is really intended to serve many of those students. And so why not create a system where your students are really reaping the benefit of that investment that the state of California has made? And so this is our mission. That Val Verde Unified School District, we found that not all of our students, like so many districts across the state, that they weren't submitting. And so we talked about that a little bit. We made it a graduation requirement. Our Board of Education did unanimously. It was a 5-0 vote. And not everybody was on board at the beginning, but Mr. Lenore created such a compelling presentation for the Board of Education that they all got there. And they understood why this work was so important to support our students and their families.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, so can we go back to the last slide here?
Yeah, let me see if I can do that. There we go.
Yeah, so, I think, as Mike said, we have a good number of kids who are 84%, they're socioeconomically disadvantaged on the free lunch program. And, if you know that, and if you take a look at your own statistics in your district, it's almost a guarantee that if they're submitting, they're going to get something. And this was one of our main pushes, but you got to understand this. Our teachers, our counselors, they were pushing FAFSA before we made this a graduation requirement in our district. The year before we made this a graduation requirement district-wide, we had 89 students that didn't complete either the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act. And I'll never forget when a newspaper reporter called me and said, "Why did you make it a requirement if you only had 89 students who needed to complete it?" And I said, "Because we had 89 students who didn't complete it. And this is something that's free money. And we have enough student debt by itself to create another recession. We have kids sometimes that are making choices where they're getting into debt before they get started. And so what can we do systematically to minimize that? Because we don't want them to start off on a deficit. So let's go to the next slide.
Hold on just a second. I'm trying to do three things at once here. Okay, next slide. There you go.
Okay, so one day we were having cabinet and Mr. McCormick said, hey, I think the state of Louisiana, I read something about them making FAFSA a graduation requirement across the entire state of Louisiana. I was like, really? Okay, let me look into that. So about 20, 30 minutes later after that meeting, I called the Louisiana State Department of Education, who then connected me with someone leading that initiative. And it was a 3-year effort to put the requirement in place. I talked to them. They were very forthright. They shared their strategies with me. They had an opt-out form. They shared that with me. I let them know I was going to take it and run with it. 6 weeks later, it was a graduation requirement in our district. In that 6 weeks time, I had to make sure I was informing the board on the why of FAFSA, which I think we'll be sharing with you some of the actual slides that we shared with our Board of Education. But in essence, we had to share with our board. We had to educate our board. We had to let them know why this is important. And we went ahead and done so, and as Mr. McCormick said, creating the compelling argument. Next slide. And so why make FAFSA completion a requirement? So on June 20th, 2017, it became a requirement. And so one of the things I said to everyone is that if we make this a graduation requirement, I guarantee you that we are going to involve all layers of the organization behind this. With every expectation, here will be the layers of support that we'll put in place. And that's exactly what we did. Let's go to the next slide. And so here's some of the why. This was some of the main compelling reasons why we went forward with this. In the Inland Empire, we had the largest amount of adults who did not have a college degree in our area. I would have assumed it was somewhere else in the United States. No, it was right here in our own backyard.
Well, we always want to pick on the South. You know, it's got to be Mississippi, Louisiana, or maybe the Rust Belt, you know, Michigan, Ohio, that area. But man, it was our own backyard.
Yeah, 27% of the adults in Riverside, San Bernardino County had a college degree. Right in our own backyard. And that's what floored us. Like, oh my gosh, that I would never have thought that. Let's go on to the next slide.
Oh, there we go. Had a little animation there, I guess.
Okay, so here's some of the why. So if you're working with your leaders, if you're working with your Board of Education and you're trying to say, I would really like to push FAFSA or the completion of the California Dream Act in our district, here's some information that we compiled through EdTrust West. More than 80% of qualified students who do not enroll in college cited cost as the #1 barrier. Let's go on to the next slide. 72% of the students who did fill it out persist. They're more likely to persist into the sophomore year of college than their peers. But 122% of low-income students are more likely to persist if they fill out the FAFSA. And so this to me was low-hanging fruit. If we take advantage of this, besides the academic preparation that we're giving our kids over 13 years, this could be the next best thing that we could do to ensure that all their foundational needs were met. And this was one of those things that I saw as easy if we just made it systematic. But I think that out of all the stats that I'm sharing with you, out of all the trivial information, this one right here gets me the most. We get into the business to make a difference. That's what we do. But for every dollar in which the student receives a Cal Grant, our state will eventually see a $4.50 return. So if we came into our field to make a difference, if we wanted to make our communities better, this would be the easiest way that we can do so, besides of all the other things we're doing with our students. And this is old information. I believe that this amount is probably larger now because we started compiling this information and research together back in 2014. So I would bet that that information is more compelling now that we're getting even a larger return than $4.
Yeah. You know, and this was so powerful. I mean, Mr. Lenore and I were out presenting to anybody who would hear from us. And I think, you know, what we've discovered is it is important to have board support, superintendent support, cabinet support. And this information that we have on this slide was vital because when we started talking to mayors, city councils, county supervisors, this was something, and even your business owners, this is something that people could get behind. Your chambers of commerce, when they saw this, it was like all of a sudden they understood like there's economic vitality wrapped up in this. And if you want to kind of transform the economic, I'll just say it again, the economic vitality of not only your district, but surrounding community. This is a great way to think about doing that. Not only is it a wonderful move in terms of equity, but this is something that can actually have a far-reaching impact on your entire community. So, you know, it's just kind of picking the right words and building the right narrative around this work. And this was a vital piece of information that we actually got from Ed Trust West, who has been very helpful to us in kind of building a coalition. And what we like to say is we want the top to enable the work, but not direct the work. And kind of what that means is it's important, again, to have board, superintendent, cabinet level support, but it's just that you want them to support the work, not direct the work. You actually want those same levels of the organization to liberate the counselors and the teachers and the support staff to do the work that they know needs to be done, create the time and space for this work to happen. Because my experience is that when the top tries to lead the work, it gets all messed up. So we want to enable the work and then get out of the way. Mark, over to you.
Okay, so beyond making it a policy, as I said earlier, we have to make this systematic. We have to get all layers in the organization around it. We have to get our community around it. We have internal resources, we have external resources. And over the next few minutes, we'll talk about what some of those resources are and how we harnessed it. But when I was doing this work at Riverside County, I met our former director of college and career readiness through the Obama administration. And his name was Greg Darniter. And at that point in time, he let me know that, Mark, just in California alone, there's $500 million left on the table. It's more along the lines now of $1 billion that are left on the table, unclaimed, because students are not filling out their FAFSA. So if I want to make a difference in my community, if I want to make a big difference in the lives of our kids, this is something that I want to make sure Riverside County is getting the lion's share so that we are making everything that we can to have a better community in the future, making sure more of our population has college degrees and letting it go from there. So this was pretty compelling.
I love that. And you might be part of a community where you know your college going rates are good. Maybe you're not situated in the Inland Empire, Riverside, San Bernardino County. You know, I still think that there's a lot of first generation college going students out there. And so I wouldn't be too quick to dismiss this as a statewide effort because we know California is still the most diverse in terms of our student population that's out there. So California has made the investment and we're grateful for that. Now we've got to make sure we create this coalition so that teachers and students and families and communities understand that this money has been set aside for students to take advantage of, but they've got to complete either their FAFSA or California Dream Act application.
Okay, and so I mentioned something earlier that we got from the state of Louisiana, that is an opt-in or an opt-out form. So as we started this initiative, one of the things I let everyone know is I want to remain sensitive to families or students if there is a concern about this process. And the first year we did this, we had a senior class of 1,565 students. We had 11 students that opted out out of 1,565. So that's a little less than 1%. And with that being said, these were very compelling issues that sometimes were beyond the student's circumstance. And so we were not going to penalize a kid for circumstances beyond their control. So we did our best. Our schools did an amazing job. Since the 7 years or the 5 years since this has been in place in Val Verde, I've received only 2 parent phone calls. One where the parent was convinced that their child's identity would be stolen. We let them know that we never put our hands on the student's social security number or anything else that would be compromising, and that the federal government has the best encryption software out there. It didn't matter. Her belief was there was a potential concern. We honored it. We gave her the form. She opted out. We've had a few cases like that, but in my mind, I'm the assistant superintendent overseeing all the school sites. If there's a parent concern, usually I'm the one receiving them. I've only had 2 parent concerns in the 5 years. When you talk about a policy like this, it's very scary for sometimes district administrators or board members because they don't really know the process. They don't know the benefit. This is where you come into play. There's a concept called, leading the leaders, and we lead the leaders by educating them. And if the leaders are armed with the right information, then things happen. A lot of our work also, we've partnered and just gotten to know the people in Chicago Public Schools, which has about 385,000 students. Well, in Chicago Public Schools, you can't go to the prom there unless you fill out the FAFSA. They put things in place there to make sure all kids were filling out the FAFSA, but it started from the top. And if the top is working with you, it makes things at the site level much easier to make sure it's being implemented and supported. So we have, at the end of this presentation, we'll make sure everyone has access to the PowerPoint, and that if there's anything we could do to help you out, if you guys have an interest in doing something similar in your district, then we'll be there to help you.
Yeah, we always like to say we're willing to share our best ideas. We aren't holding back. And this next slide represents one of Mr. Lenore's best ideas. We talked early on about how this should not fall on the counselors' backs. They're already, maximizing their time the best they can. And so how does this impact the work of the counselor? And before I turn it over to Mark to talk about how we kind of think about the work in Val Verde, I really want to acknowledge Mr. Lenore for his work in Val Verde in building capacity of the counselors. It's interesting. A lot of school systems, we make investments in the teachers, we make investments in the instructional coaches, we make investments in our administrators, and very oftentimes the counselors, in terms of professional development, professional networking opportunities, are overlooked, quite frankly. And I say that kind of sheepishly as a former middle school and high school principal. And Mr. Lenore has really done a lot in the district to pull our counselors together, pour into them, invest in them, and have them feel like they're part of something larger. And I think that's important because if I think about, if you're on a high school campus, maybe you have one teacher who teaches physics, maybe you have one teacher who teaches calculus. I think very often that same type of isolation that happens with some of those teachers that may only teach, be that one teacher for the subject. Maybe you have 2, 3, 4, 5 counselors at a particular school, but from a district perspective, if you bring the counselors together, they feel like, this is my network. These are my people. And I think that's really important. So I hope that if you're in a position to make some decisions about building a professional learning network for your counselors in your district, I would absolutely encourage you to do that. If you're a counselor or a teacher within your district, this is an opportunity, again, to lead the leaders. So, Mr. Lenore, talk to the folks in the group here about what this chart means.
Yeah, what this chart reflects is just the layer of what a teacher could do to reinforce this process in Val Verde. And this is what we have them do. And so you could see we go from teacher to site administrator to guidance technicians to cabinet to board of ed, district management team, even outside organizations like our local legal immigration service for undocumented families, our local community college, and what they do in bringing their counselors down to reinforce the message through presentations they do to our seniors in our classrooms, to just harnessing all the resources that the California Student Aid Commission has for school districts. And, you know, they have special reports that can let us know who has and who hasn't completed. If they haven't completed, what information is lacking? What do we need to do to verify them and get them completed? I also occasionally may call them and say, hey, you know, I really want to get a better idea of how many of our students are actually getting a Cal grant. So they actually have reports for awards. They won't ever give you the dollar amount, but they'll at least tell you how many of your students have got a Cal grant. And depending on where the student is going, you can kind of determine what the potential grant amount may be for that student. And so as a result, you have an idea of how much more money is being brought in through your efforts for FAFSA completion. You know, not everybody is moved by data. I am. But sometimes people are moved by financial data with dollar signs tied to it. And I think, you know, when you hear like, you know, we had 965 students who got a Cal grant, that means a lot. That means we have millions of dollars being poured into our system because of the efforts we made with FAFSA and the California Dream Act. So I find that pretty exciting, you know, so yeah.
And I just wanted to highlight the ASB, our associated student bodies, our ASBs and our ASB directors. They've really gotten behind this, and we do things, and you'll see a little bit, but, you know, special activities for kids, some of them school wide, some of them for our students who have completed FAFSA. One of the awards that we do for FAFSA completers in the district that cost us $0 is everybody who completes either the FAFSA or California Dream Act application gets an extra graduation ticket. Well, and that's something that the kids really are motivated by.
Yeah, and so you have a lot of districts now that are looking and writing in their LCAPs FAFSA completion, so they're dedicating money towards it. Harupa Valley is one I just recently looked at where they actually wrote in FAFSA completion in their LCAP document. We have a number of other districts that are doing the same now. We've always kind of said that, you know, hey, it doesn't take very much money to do this. We've already made investments. You could put these investments like the extra duty of counselors into your LCAP, right? Which is what a lot of them are doing. You could actually fund positions through LCAP, which a number of them are doing. And so we already have these positions funded, and we get creative as best as way we can to stretch the dollars around here like everyone else. But this goes to show you how you could actually have glimpses of how you could actually fund this. Again, from our angle, Mike just talked about ASB. ASB can get involved. Your school's PTSA can get involved. There's a lot of potential avenues, but we tried to tap into our existing resources. And we've always kind of made the claim that we're spending very little money on this, but there's ways that you could actually write it into your LCAP that you can actually funnel more money in this direction for FAFSA completion. And this is our family engagement. Our family engagement center is one of 16 in the state of California being recognized by the California Collaborative Educational Excellence as a model family engagement program. It's a very active program. One of the reasons why it's successful is because it reinforces all of our district initiatives, including FAFSA completion. So our family engagement will actually do presentations on financial aid and just making sure that our parents are in the loop. They work very closely with TODEC, our legal center for undocumented families. TODEC will come in and do presentations. TODEC is a trusted source of information for a lot of our community members. They got behind it. That was a real quick visit to them and just letting them know what we were trying to do. And once they found out what we were trying to do, they actually backed us up. And so look at your community resources. It could be a tax preparation service. It could be your local community college or local four-year institution. See what you
And
could do to harness their resources also into this process.
yeah, and don't count out your faith-based organizations in your community too. I mean, a lot of folks, attend a service on a weekend, and that's another great opportunity. And those pastors are also people that are trusted within the community, and so it's a great message to have delivered by your faith-based organizations in your community. And again, local context matters. So, TODUC for us was part of our local context. So we reached out. You may have other organizations that exist within your local community. Just don't be afraid to pick up the phone and reach out and take that opportunity to explain how this benefits all of our students within the community.
And so here's just a picture of our management team, phone banking for student households who have not submitted a FAFSA yet. We have all of our district managers get involved in this process. So we get a list from our counselors of who has and who has not submitted. For those who haven't submitted, we started doing phone calls. And we did this one night a year where we gathered all of our management team. The first year we made 750 calls over 2.5 hours. Year two, we made 450 calls. And after year two, we haven't had to come back because we generally have most of our kids completing FAFSA now. It's just become part of the culture.
Yeah, and we named it. This was dialing for dollars. And this is a great idea we stole from one of our neighboring districts, Paris Union High School District, who came up with this. Mark went and visited, saw what it looked like over there, immediately brought it over here, stole their transcripts for the telephone, messaging that they were doing. And of course, we're fortunate in our staff. We have people who speak English, people who speak Spanish. And so this was a great way to show our counselors and support staff at our school sites that, hey, we're in this with you, and we're going to do our part. And as Mark said, as we've built out these systems over time, we haven't had the need like we had in the beginning. It's like it starts to, you're building a culture, and so that families talk to other families. Oh, my student graduated this year, your student's graduating next year. Hey, FAFSA is going to be a part of that process. And so word of mouth is a big thing that helps this spread. And we make it fun. We talked about our ASBs on that matrix earlier. Here's some of the things. We're pretty close to Coachella. We just had the Coachella Music and Arts Festival. And so we do something called Cashchella, where we bring in laser lights and DJ music, and the kids do tie-dye t-shirts, and it's a lot of fun. It's something, again, local context matters. And so this was something for us. We also do FAFSA Fridays. Mardi Gras is usually February, March. That's usually around the same time that the FAFSA deadline is coming up. So we call it Money Gras. And we do these celebrations. And so all the students that have done FAFSA for California Dream Act completion, they got it taken care of. Then, hey, we're going to dedicate an afternoon to celebrate you and to celebrate this idea of completion. And it's a big party. Who doesn't want to be part of a party?
Yep. Then we just recently had one of our counselors, and she put together a couple slides for us. It's our college going culture. They're a national avid demonstration school. They do college kickoff week where they get everyone excited about the college application process, and then just that college going culture. And so when we do college kickoff, our entire district from elementary all the way up to high school has activities where we're celebrating and encouraging kids to start thinking about their future. We do something called the half cap ceremony. Again, these are all things that don't cost us any money. The half cap ceremony is for sophomores who are halfway through and are on target to be graduating. And it's a big ceremony. It keeps them motivated. As a district, we write into our LCAP, the PSAT and SAT. We've covered the cost of all of that. If we can go back one slide, Mike. And then the college signing day and college shirt Thursdays. We make it a point to really push the culture. And, you know, we've had a few write-ups from Forbes on the culture in Val Verde because of all the activities we're doing. Make room, better make room. The Michelle Obama organization has actually recognized our district too with just some of these initiatives. And so the FAFSA California Dream Act college going culture is school-wide, but we also have our counselors go down to the middle schools and making sure they know. Many of them are doing classroom presentations as well. These are all the things that our counselors are doing. Next slide.
Yeah, I want to say, you know, that's from 2017, and the significance of that photo, you might be asking, well, geez, you guys haven't won since 2017. No, we keep winning, but this was the year that the Race to Submit went from being a Riverside County initiative to the state taking it up as a state initiative through the California Student Aid Commission. So this picture holds a special place in our hearts.
And then this is just kind of some of the calendar things that our counselors have. This is just a one-year plan for FAFSA completion at Rancho Verde High School. And those counselors have been consistently in the top in the state of California for the last 8 years.
Yeah, pretty exciting.
Just more of what they do, you know, by date, some of the things they have. This will be in the presentation. And it'll be available for you to take a look at too. I think it's really important to make sure that there is a set counselor calendar in place. So everyone is involved. And this is, again, slides that she put together for us. And we now have a partnership with CalSoap through our county office. And we actually have personnel from there coming over and assisting our kids as well. So yeah, many layers to this. And as we mentioned earlier, celebrating success. Free graduation tickets for those who actually get it completed. And so, yeah, we get people pretty excited based on some of the incentives we put in play here. And here's just some more just recognition incentive things that they have at the Casella event. Here's a picture. I talked about our elementaries are getting involved. This is a kindergarten student in our district. We are actually saving kindergarten pictures with them in cap and gowns. And when they graduate, we will have their picture from kindergarten along with their senior year photo up on a giant mega screen where they could see. And it's going to go over like hotcakes.
Yeah. Well, and you know, one of the things we do, and again, that really not a lot of cost in this is if you're not thinking about doing a valedictorian walk where you take your high school valedictorians, your honor students, and bring them back to their elementary schools right before graduation to do a walk and be back on their elementary school campuses. Not only is it fantastic for the kids, but I tell you what, you want to put your first and second grade teachers in tears. Have those seniors come back and visit their first, second, third grade, their kindergarten teachers. And all of a sudden, the elementary school teachers feel like they've been part of this whole process. And what a unifying event that is for the kids to reconnect with their teachers from when they were very young, but also for the teachers to feel a part of the success of these students as they've matured, become seniors in high school, and now are looking to their post-secondary plans. So I think that's just been a really powerful experience for all of us. So if you haven't thought about doing something like that, really consider doing that. There'll be lots of tears of joy in that entire process.
And all these photos come from our principals. Their principals are actually out there very active on social media. This is something that we got them to do a long time ago, just to celebrate all the great things that are happening. Because if you're not doing that, people generally fill in those blanks with other information that may not be so positive sometimes. On this slide, these are just myths and obstacles caused by the FAFSA graduation requirement. And we've made sure that all of these potential concerns are addressed. Everyone is schooled. They talk about it. They talk about it to our parents. They talk about it to our students. And so we virtually have kind of eliminated most, if not all, the concerns in our district here. And then
we talked about this one.
Yeah.
We talked about a little bit of this. You've had the if you've been in for a while, you've got in the chat. You can go to CSAC Race to Submit website and see where your district or schools are at. We were super excited when Tom Torlakson put this out. He sent a letter to all superintendents urging them to adopt the Race to Submit strategies. This was back in 2017, right after, I guess, was it right after or right before? I don't remember. Our district made it a graduation requirement. So we're super stoked about that. And then we've got leaderboard, and of course we should update this slide. Most recently, we had all of our comprehensive high schools were in the top 3 or 4 again this year for 21-22. So super excited about that. Our schools were recognized just yesterday at the Race to Submit Awards. So very excited about that. And then, Mark, you want to talk about this slide?
Yeah, you could see since Louisiana actually made this a graduation requirement, all of a sudden their data skyrocketed. And as a state, they had the highest percent of FAFSA completion in the entire country. And if we go to the next slide, though, yet Louisiana had the highest increase, but California had the largest number increase because our student population is much larger. And we attribute this to the work of the statewide initiative Race to Submit that started here in Riverside County. And then here's just more emphasis on making sure you're really emphasizing the culture. There's a saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast in a lot of leadership books, and it's true. But we work on our culture at a very early age. Here's one of our teachers in the center, just in a cap and gown, celebrating her
graduation.
Yeah. And we just really do a really good job of creating that culture in our district. And one thing leads to another. You will see spillover effects of this pushing of the culture into other aspects of our students' achievement. And let's go ahead and take this one, Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're thinking about high school graduation rates, and that's something I would say step up to the next level and focus on FAFSA and CADAA completion, because that's actually going to drive up your high school graduation rates and your A through G. And so, here is our 5-year graduation rate. You can see not a tremendous amount of disparity between student groups. We're pretty excited about how our kids are doing. And you'll actually see that our African-American student group has some of the highest graduation rates amongst our significant student groups. So very excited about this. We continue to reinforce this work, but we really think it's driven by our focus on FAFSA CADAA completion. And by the way, if you're a school district who's thinking about careers and career and technical education, we're also seeing significant increases in our CTE participation. And that's because a lot of our CTE classes, and we have 44 pathways right now, not only are the students getting credit for CTE, they're also getting their A through G credits. So super excited about that. And what do we have here? Cal Grants offered, you can see pre-pandemic, we were up to 947 Cal Grants offered. Mr. Lenore covered, we only had 11 opt-outs the first year we had done that. The next year we only had 10 opt-outs. So this is not really something we want you to be scared of. And percent of students enrolled in college. So this comes from Student Tracker Reports, which is really that national student clearinghouse. So we're up to 67%. Obviously, during the pandemic, those numbers plummeted just like, everywhere across the nation. But you can see just this tremendous steady increase over each year was going great. And let me see, I just want to check, Pedro Cara, how are we doing on time here?
About 10 minutes.
We've got about 10 minutes or so.
Okay, perfect. Okay. And so, Mark, you want to take this slide?
Yeah, if we can go back one slide.
Sure.
I want to be totally transparent. You can see where we were at in 2017. Pandemic hits. So our college going rate went down in 2020 and 21, like just about everyone in the state. And so I think we're not unique. I think this is something we've seen everywhere. So we can go down to the next slide now. And so, just here's some overall things, just increase knowledge of FAFSA and the DREAM Act, increase the level of concern. If you see all this money that's not actually being utilized, and you have a high population of students who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, you're in alignment to be able to skyrocket and bring a lot more money into your community.
Yeah, and Mark, we had a question in the chat that came up here. What about our strategies or talking points for students or parents who are planning to go to military? We'll say military first, and then the second part of it was non-college bound and want the opt-out. So let's go with military.
Well, the military actually encourages FAFSA completion. We've actually harnessed into our local recruiters, and they're coming to our campuses now and helping push the FAFSA. And so there's no better statement than coming from the recruiters themselves. So, they're there helping us with our students and also talking to their parents. And so, there's plenty of opportunities there as well. But I think when it comes to kids who aren't planning on going to college, let's say, or a trade school or a technical school, you'd be amazed just on what we've seen of how many kids change their mind. And so what we're saying is this: understand what your initial plans are right now. They may end up coming into fruition, or you may change your mind. If we could spend 45 minutes together, it's not going to hurt you. It's only going to potentially help you. So consider it a form of insurance. And so these are the sorts of conversations that we have with kids.
Right on. Let me hit the next slide here. Oh, this is one of our favorite ones. Yeah, it's interesting. Back in 2017, when we had our Board of Education decided to unanimously approve our graduation requirement for FAFSA completion, the local newspaper did a story on it. And you know how people can comment on the stories down below? So this is one. It says, "Leave it to the assorted idiots and imbeciles at Val Verde." That would be Mark and I. We're the assorted idiots and imbeciles. "This has got to be one of the worst districts in America. Home of the illegal alien Mexicans, social promotion, and of course, more participation in free meals than reading and writing. Grade F." Fortunately, I had the situational awareness to take a screenshot of some of this stuff, and I didn't know how we were going to use it in the future. But this is one of the ways we use this in the future. And we say this and we put this in the presentation so that you can prepare mentally that you might face some of this type of criticism from the keyboard warriors that are out there on the blogs and social media. And, just be prepared for that. And you too will survive. And I don't know if we have one more. Oh, yeah. Now, this one was a little bit different because it came from a professor at our local university. So dumb. Of course, virtually all students graduate via the miracle of online credit recovery. But what percentage of these students are actually adequately prepared to take on college classes with a reasonable chance of passing? And then down at the bottom, how about addressing the real problem that scores of kids are graduating from high school with absolutely no chance of succeeding at the next level? Sad. Well, one of the things we know is that our students are doing well when they go on to the next level. Not only are we increasing our college going rates, we're also increasing our persistence in college.
Well, so there's also multiple measures for admissions now, and you're seeing that some of the traditional tests are being eliminated. So, Mr. UC Riverside 98, why don't you come down and point out to me the kids who you feel shouldn't go?
Yeah. So anyway, so we always appreciate sharing this part. And so that takes us to questions. Let's see here. So let me get off the screen share here. And we are open for any questions that you might have, anything that we can help you with. Obviously, we'll make sure that you get a copy of the presentation. I think this recording will also be available. But this has been a fairly quiet group in the chat. Hopefully, we've said something that's been of value here in the last time that you've invested with us. If you have a question or you'd like to put something in the chat, please feel free to do so. You can also unmute and, open up the microphone and talk to us. So Bethany, what are some strategies you've used, say during COVID, to help engage independent study and virtual students who aren't on campus as much? Great. Great. And one of the things our counselors did even pre-pandemic is they had built Google Classrooms by grade level for all the students on the campus. And this is a practice that's been carried over into our independent study programs. We also have a virtual school here in the district that's been in existence for many, many years. And so that's a great strategy by building that Google Classroom, create the code, have the kids join, and that way you can have them. Tracy, you made me laugh. You can just be sending that constant stream of messages via Google Classroom. And we appreciate you, Tracy. Thanks so much. And Mr. Lenore and I, like I said, we're willing to share our best ideas, and literally we can send you everything that we've got, and you can literally throw your logo and name on there and run with it if that's what you want to do. But we can share our board policy updates, our administrative regulation things. And then we've also got some pretty good information we can send along that just kind of, gives a little bit more meat than what we're able to cover in the presentation here, just in terms of practices, systems, and structures. And so Mark and I'll throw our emails in the chat here momentarily. Other thoughts, concerns, phobias, neuroses. I always say, the worst thing that happened to me in my mind never happened to me actually in reality. And so there, Mr. Lenore, yeah, do you mind sharing your presentation to the board about adding? Yeah, absolutely. We can dig that out and dust it off. And, it's interesting. You learn things. I mean, that was back in 2017. So we would probably actually freshen that a little bit, because now we have AB 469, which is kind of like, now it's becoming a state requirement. So it's a little bit different circumstance. We had to talk our board through, is this going to prevent students from graduating? And the absolute answer to that was no, it's not. And we would never prevent a student from graduating. And then at the time, we had a board member who was a physics instructor at one of our high schools, and formerly. And for her, she was really struggling with, well, if it's a requirement, but there's an opt-out, how does that work? And, as you kind of heard through the presentation, yes, we have the opt-out, but it certainly hasn't been a big number. A class of 1,550 students across the district, and we had 11 opt-outs. That's pretty good. And today, the opt-outs continue to be nominal. There's very few folks out there. And, for those that do have really strong opinions, that's fine. The goal is not to prevent anybody from graduating. The goal is to create a culture that is promoting FAFSA and Dream Act completion. And so let me put my email here for you in the chat. And then it looks like we got a message from Ernie here. So let me see if I can do two things at once. Probably not. They say it's actually not humanly possible to do two things at once. So with passage of AP 469, are there any new strategies you're exploring to help increase post-secondary going rates? What are you exploring, including a requirement for students to complete CCC applications? Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, but look, yeah. And so one of the things, like our local community college district, they have a college promise, and, so that's free community college. And one of the things, when you lift up the hood underneath, is everybody's got to complete the FAFSA, because, many of those students will qualify for aid, which assists the colleges in making those college promises come to fruition. So that's a piece of it. And in our district, we actually have our community college counselors come to our high schools and have students fill out the community college application while the students are sitting in our high school classes. And so we've really tried to do is promote a seamless transition, a handoff, if you will, between our students who are looking to go to our local community college district. And I say district because there's 3 colleges within the district that are all drivable for our students. Our closest one being Moreno Valley College, but Riverside City College and also Norco Community College are part of the same district. So I think that's a thing. And with AB 469, Mark, I'll punt that over to you. Any new things or strategies we're thinking about? Oh, you're muted.
I think more of the effort now that we have in our district is looking to see what can we do to promote financial literacy amongst all of our grade levels. And this is not a unique effort to Val Verde per se, but it's an effort that is in our county office coming from our county superintendent. And so we have people on the committee, on the county committee, and we have efforts now of getting checking accounts, savings accounts for our elementary students. So those are the latest initiatives, but a lot of the stuff that we've put in play with the California community colleges, if they fill out the FAFSA, they pre-register, take a full load, these kids are going to get most of their fees taken care of.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I'll just emphasize there, Mr. Rios, that financial, training has been something that our board has been pretty passionate about, is having kids understand financial responsibilities, things like that. And their take was, look, if we're going to have this as a graduation requirement, then we better do something to undertake the responsibility to make sure we're also teaching students financial awareness, how to balance the books, the dangers of credit cards. I don't know about you all, but I can certainly raise my hand and say I was one of the dumb students who, couldn't wait to fill out those credit card applications when I got onto college campus. And, and I suffered for a lot of years, not really understanding the full, negative impacts of what that does. So I think, that's, to me, these initiatives kind of go, hand in hand with one another. And it's just good stuff. And we're starting to see a lot more material out there, free material, that focuses on teaching, consumer finances to our students at a younger age. Right on. Any closing thoughts there, Mark?
No, I think we covered it, and I think we're beyond our closing time. So
okay, right on. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you for spending time with us today. And if you have any questions or we can help shorten the runway in your district or school, we're happy to do that. Just reach out to us. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you both so much. Once again, I know we're a little past our time. Just a reminder for folks to please join us for our closing remarks from Marlene Garcia. And again, you'll have copies of the presentation and materials available to you. So with that in mind, thank you. Have a great rest of your day. And thanks for attending our conference. Take care.